All right. We'll go. Start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, for roll call, we'll let the record reflect that all members are present, and we will start the truth and taxation public hearing.
Good evening, Chair Hofstad, members of the board, Dr. Christine Werkamp-Herman. I am the business manager, Heidi Hagen, and I am presenting the truth and taxation presentation that is required by state statute tonight. And we'll go through several slides. We'll have some opportunity for public comment at the end. And in the meantime, we'll get started. So the meeting, truth and taxation requirements, what I'm going over tonight is all part of the statute and the reasons for some of these housekeeping slides, if you will. So the meeting must be held between the November 25th and December 30th timeframe at 6 p.m. or later. It may be part of our regularly scheduled board meeting, and the presentation must include discussion on the district's fiscal year 2025 budget, the pay 2025 proposed tax levy, and we must allow for public comment, which I mentioned will come up here at the end. So Minnesota school funding in general, we are funded by federal government, state government, local fees, and local taxpayers. Funds through property taxes, with the state of Minnesota being the largest source of our funding in the district. This slide is one that I have included for the last several years in truth and taxation meetings. And what this shows is over the course of the last 10 years, you can see there's two different lines projecting the basic formula allowance, which is in the green, and then what the formula allowance would be if the cost of inflation was included based on the consumer price index. And the gap there is just under $1,400 per pupil, which equates to several millions of dollars to public school districts alone, with the regard that state funding just hasn't kept up with inflation. They're starting to put into the formula some inflation clauses, and that will be coming up here in the next fiscal year. We'll see how that plays out with the upcoming legislative session. But overall, basic formula is not keeping up, which definitely plays a factor in the local levy that is authorized by the school board each year. Requirement to look at the budget. This is the 24-25 original budget that the board approved in June of this current year. Overall, general fund, food service, community service, and debt service. There are some projected expenses exceeding revenues. However, since that time, we have worked and continue to work on many facets of the budget and opportunities to lessen that if at all possible, working towards an option for revenues to exceed expense. So we'll have more to come in upcoming board meetings when we look at potential budget revisions for the current budget year. And then also tonight, after this, you'll hear about our fiscal year 24 results with our audit. So this is a graphical representation of our general fund revenue by source. Again, state aid being almost 86% of our overall funding for the general fund. We have levy coming in just over 7%. Other types of revenue streams just under 6%, and our federal aid just over 1% of the total general fund revenue budget. Similar graphics of this is expenditures by program code. So we break out the programs similar to how we present the expenditure budget. So we're looking at salaries and wages, benefits, fees for service, supplies, and capital. There you can see over 75%, almost, well, actually over 80% of our district general fund budget is in the form of salaries, wages, and benefits. 12.5% fees for service, 6.5% of the overall budget is supplies, and just over 2% is capital, which is consistent and what we will see going forward in budgets to come, that this type of allocation by program is relatively expected in a public school district. This is just a little bit of a financial highlight when looking at the district overall. Recently, we had the opportunity to refund a bond, which provided savings to the overall taxpayers for our debt service that we're required to pay based on the voter approved bond. Our rating came in exceptionally high for the size of our school district. I've drawn a blank on what the actual rating was, AA minus maybe. Christine is shaking her head, and that is an exceptional rating. Again, like I said, for the district our size, and we even beat some of the largest Minnesota public school districts in the state. So, and that's mostly based on financial components, but also demographics of the community tax base as well. And then our fund balance, the fund balance policy of between 14 and 20% has been met in the previous years, but also you'll find out tonight here in our audit review, our fund balance policy meets, the unassigned fund balance policy meets the current setting of 14%, which we end up 16% in FY24. The 2025 property tax levy, so this will get into the details of the actual levy that we're presenting and recommending the board to consider tonight. The timeline, this has been reviewed in previous board meetings, but just a reminder, the school district tax levy timeline spans over a few different years. Summer is information where the state will provide us with some preliminary levies, and so the board considers that in September. In September, the board, like I said, mentioned the board will certify a preliminary levy, and that's where the maximum was set at that time. If there were to be any elections to be held regarding bonds or other voter approved levies, that happens in the months of November. Ongoing updates to the levy take place between the months of September and tonight. We hold the Truth and Taxation meeting, and then property taxes are collected by the counties from the taxpayers in the calendar year of 2025, which actually results in revenue to our school district in our fiscal year 26. This is just some basic components of how the local property tax levy is accounted for in dollars and cents. So the state limits the local property tax levy based on statutories defined in formulas. And some of those formulas are driven by total pupils in our district, specific eligible expenditure types, the population of our district, any voter authorized levies that have been passed by voters, and district property valuations. This is a look at the overall levy, left to right categories, both general fund, community service fund, and debt service fund. The final pay 24 levy there for reference that was board approved back in December of 2023. Which is revenue for us in fiscal year 25. The proposed levy that we're recommending tonight for the board to consider, and then the percent of dollar and the amount of dollar change and percentage change. But overall, a small increase of about 1.29% on the overall levy funds. So that doesn't equate to what our taxpayers are going to see on their tax statements. This is just in general dollars and cents as far as the increase from the previous levy to this current levy. And all of the factors that I mentioned on the previous slide are to be accounted for in this increase. As I'd mentioned, the tax levy and the budget, so the percent change to our tax levy doesn't necessarily equate to that same percent change to our budgeted revenue. Again, some of those levy increases can be offset by reduction in state aid, meaning no additional revenue for school district budgets. And so again, this has to do with legislation. It has to do with some of those components I had mentioned in the previous slide, as well as anything that would change in tonight's levy consideration by the board. This is some valuation history based on the property value increases in the various properties in the district. This is looking specifically at the two different categories: referendum market value, which takes into account only certain properties in the district, and net tax capacity, which takes into account all properties in the district. The graph shows over time dating back to 2017 all the way through current estimated taxes for 2025. You can see there overall valuation of properties across the district had continuously increased, flattened out a little bit, and then in 23 and 24 values rose up towards 15% in the categories, as did the category of net tax capacity. So we're looking at large property valuation increases, which are a big component of what each taxpayer sees on their tax statements for the various municipalities that collect tax levies. The good news, I guess, is property valuations may have stabilized a little bit, and we're seeing just what most people would consider a modest increase of under 4% valuation. And so hoping that taxpayers will see some relief there based on their property values. So this is the timeline for taxpayers when it comes to levy dollars and their tax statements. So in March of this calendar year, March of 2024, you would have received, or taxpayers would have received, their preliminary valuations from the counties. In the early spring, early summer, the local and county boards have the opportunity for taxpayers to come and appeal their property valuations. That would be the time for our taxpayers to consider that. And then in November, counties deliver mailed notices based on the preliminary levy information that the board set in September. Attend truth and taxation hearings throughout the end of November and the month of December. And then in March of the following year, so March of 2025, taxpayers will start receiving their tax statements, for which, depending on the property types and categories, taxes payable in that year, May and October. Example of what a property tax statement looks like. There's a lot of information on the property tax statements, amounts, contact information. Important to identify that contact information as to who needs to be contacted if you were to have questions on the various municipalities collecting tax levy on your specific properties. This would be the back of your notice or notices that you would receive in March, in addition to contact information on the front. This would be where you want to take notice of the appeal process. Reminder, this valuation comes in March. This valuation our taxpayers would have received in March of 2024. So keep an eye out for this statement to come March of 2025. It will have your preliminary tax assessed and or tax market values. If you have any questions on that, this is where you can get the information on what to do about that. As I'd mentioned, changes to tax law or legislation impact levies, municipality levies, and the school district levy. Some of those tax law changes of recent that impact the taxes that our taxpayers will pay in 25. So the homestead market value exclusion is increasing for taxes payable in 2025. What that means is taxpayers might see some reduction in their taxes for residential home properties that are valued up to the $1,700,200. So that would be something that may impact our taxpayers in our district. In addition, agricultural homestead classification increasing. So there was a limit to that amount for taxes payable in 24. That increased from 2.15 million up to 3.5 million for taxes payable in 2025. So what this does is it will reduce taxes for landowners with greater than that previous limit of 2.15 million in land classified as homestead. So how that impacts each individual taxpayer is going to be specific and will be noted on your tax statement. I went over this a little bit, but there's just two different types of valuation for properties, and you'll see this on your tax statements as well. Net tax capacity. So what this does is it includes most all property types in the district that pay a portion of all levies, whereas referendum market value excludes any ag land or seasonal rec properties. So there are certain levies that only tax on certain categories of property types, and then there's the net tax capacity that taxes on all types of properties. And so making sure that taxpayers are aware that there's different categories. This is just looking a little bit at how property values don't always rise uniformly across all properties. So across the district. So if you think of it as, a pie and dividing that property tax pie, if you will, it doesn't, one increase on a certain taxpayer's property doesn't necessarily equate to another decrease in a property tax owner's valuation. So typically what taxpayers will see is higher increases in your specific property valuations equate to a larger piece of the property pie. So if my valuation goes up, I'm going to pay more of that property tax than, say, a good friend of mine that lives in a different area of the district and their valuations went down. Again, just a little bit more on dividing that property tax pie. So if the district's tax payable in 2025, we're taxing all property types of the levy of just over $2 million, where the lesser or just under 600,000 of our total district levy is taxing the smaller piece of the pie when it comes to property types. And so that helps spread out the tax burden on all of our taxpayers when you can tax more of the district's taxpayers versus the smaller referendum market value. This slide we saw back in September. It's just a refresher of what variables of the current levy that the school district taxes on, what categories and the amounts that come from those. And so broken out in a bar graph with the various colors. So that top gray area is all of our categorical levies. So that the board would have been eligible to approve. So that's our operating capital, our LTFM, long-term facilities maintenance, our community ed, our career and technical education, any lease levies, if we were to have any, that the board chose to levy for, which we're currently not lease levying for the mid-state portion of our expenditures, where other district boards choose to do that. So that's a small portion of the overall tax levy. And this is on a home value assumption of about 300,000 of the total $1,236 of taxes the taxpayer would pay. 119 of those dollars are for those categorical levies. Board approved debt, that's the green area, that's, I think that says $24. Out of the $1,200 total tax, that would have been the long-term facilities maintenance bond that the board approved and had authority to approve in previous years. The big middle chunk, the $718 out of the total $1,200 in tax that this specific example shows is voter approved bonds and capital projects levy. So the district doesn't have a capital projects levy, but we do have a large voter approved bond, and over 60% of the total levy that this taxpayer example pays is $718. The bottom lighter blue color is $375. This is again categorical levies, local optional equity and transition, and that is $375 of the total $1,200 tax example, and the district does not have a voter approved operating referendum, so there's no tax there. This is an assumption based on property value increases, so I think the theme of tonight would be property value for each specific taxpayer, and the type of property they have or properties they have certainly impacts the taxes that they pay for their school district levy. So this is an example, residential homestead, showing a 0% increase to their value, which would in some cases may be nice for people. You can see there overall what they paid in 2024 based on their value of 100 and just different valuations, $144,000 residential homestead all the way up to a $530,000 residential homestead, and what that change or net change would be. And so based on the current pay 25 levy homeowners in residential homestead categories will see a decrease if their property values stayed the same. No increase, no decrease. So this is an annual increase or decrease. And in this case, it's an annual change of as much as $45 up to about $75, depending on the value of your residential home. The next assumption is if this specific example is an 8% increase in valuation, that shows what I would consider a nominal annual change in levy taxes for the specific valuations of homestead, anywhere from $8 a year up to the most expensive valuation of $572,000 or $152 change annual. We do have some agricultural types of properties in the district, and so this is showing the egg to school impact and what that means for Royalton Public School District. So the state will pay for approximately just under $300,000 of the $1.74 million debt, $1.7 million debt service that the district pays for that voter approved bond. So in 2025, the state pays for $300,000 of that overall total debt service that the district owes. These are just some other taxpayer resources. Taxes are tax statements in general. and I have been working and presenting truth in taxation for the last 10 years are not easy. And so here are some resources that if property owners have questions, they can reach out to these different organizations to learn a little bit more about their specific situations. For our district, to be able to touch on all the different types of property categories, the different types of property tax classifications, the different rates, which is a never-ending endeavor. And so looking for out for our taxpayers, what options they can have to reach out for resources to learn a little bit more about their own situations. So tonight, the recommendation for the final 24 page 2025 school district levy would be to certify the amount of $2,608,996.73. Well, that's a lot of information. Truth in taxation is a lot of information, important information. Certainly, we provided more in this presentation than the state statute requires. We feel it's helpful, important in order for our taxpayers to have the information available to them, and is why we included it tonight. But now, if we have any public comments, I certainly would welcome that.
I'd just like to add too that the LTFM bond that the board in past years approved, just to remind everyone, that will be over in 2032. It expires then. And the voter approved levy for the bonding for the building will be done in 2036. So just a reminder of that, because sometimes we forget since it's still a few years old.
Which was a part of, yeah, so the term or the that I'm looking for, the bond, the voter approved bonds amortization schedule stayed the same during the refunding, so that
Still ends in 2036.
still ends in 2036 with the savings.
And that was around $60,000 a year over the course of the next 10 years.
About 700 and some $1,000 total savings.
Right.
But public comment is an option, and if we have any public comment, I would welcome that the individuals would state their name and ask their question and keep it to 2 to 3 minutes of discussion.
Any comments?
All right, good evening, everybody. Ellie Holm. The 2 million and odd dollars, would that be max levy then? Like
Yes.
100%? Okay. I would like to just tell you guys or ask you guys to take into consideration again, although it remains in a gray area still, that levy vote can go back into the voters' hands. I just want you all to take into consideration the few hundred signatures from district members I collected that would like to see less levy percentage taken from them when you approve the max vote and for the max levy dollars.
If I might, first of all, thank you for your comment. Reduction in levy doesn't necessarily equate to reduction in our taxpayers' amounts that they pay, but it certainly reduces any state aid equalization that we would receive. So any under levying or reducing of a levy for our school district impacts the amount of state aid that is equalized, meaning the state pays it versus our taxpayers. Could be anywhere from $400,000 to $700,000 of money we would no longer receive from the state. And so that alone in a district of our size is an impact that would certainly make a difference in how we budget moving forward. And is a savings for our taxpayer.
Anybody else? All right.
Right on schedule.
Perfect. All right, thank you. So I will Before we do that, does anybody have any questions for Heidi on any of that? All right, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second. All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. We will close the taxation meeting and 6:35, so we were right on time to the next regular scheduled meeting. So I called the regular scheduled meeting to order. We already did the pledge and the roll call with all members present. We'll start with the board chair comments. I just have one comment. So we're just over $16,000 in donations for this month. So I just want to say again, thank you to all those that are supporting our school and our students. That's a pretty amazing number. From there, I will take an approval of the agenda. Director Bowman, thank you. Second. Director Hackett, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. And appreciation, recognition, and presentations.
We have, Caitlin Arnzen, sorry, Chair Hofstad, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Warecamp, Caitlin Arnzen, Activities Director. I would like to recognize 3 of our student athletes. First off would be Haley Wilbuck. She was named to the Morrison County All-Area Volleyball Team. Next would be Max Van Erden, who is also put into the All-Area Football Team for the Morrison County record. And then Madison Albright was the Morrison County Record Volleyball Player of the Year for her season this past year. So Max is playing basketball right now, and I think the girls are supporting their classmates, so they were not able to be here, but we had a very good fall sports. Thank you.
And I would like, present a certificate of thank you for service to Angela Roaring and Kyra Bowman for your service to the board and our school district. Thank you so much. I know it's your last meeting and we just want to say thank you so much because we realize the time and commitment that it takes, and it's really meaningful for us, and was wonderful working with all of you, and I hope you stay active with our schools, as I know you will. And I would like to get a picture if we could. So. We have your certificate. Oh, yeah. Yep, now your certificate, you get to the center stage. Bounce. The Grinch, I don't know what. Picture, Tyra. I know. The last picture. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That was a little crazy for me.
4 years goes fast, doesn't it?
It does. It's a good 4 years.
Recognition of citizens for input purposes. I don't have any sheets tonight. Anybody? All right. We will go into board committee report. So finance.
Finance committee met on November 25th. Pretty standard meeting, and tonight Heidi is going to share a presentation on part 2 about post-secondary enrollment and the other details.
For mid-state, so Little Falls is looking to possibly join mid-state. So we have a person from Sourcewell that's going to review the advantages and disadvantages of what it would be if that did happen. And they joined back mid-state again. So that's going to be an ongoing process for for some months. And then our next meeting is on the 8th. So after our organization meeting, then we'll meet there and do that. And then policy. So we are rescinding one policy that MSBA doesn't have, and that whole policy is clearly spelled out in statute. So not something we really need. The other one that we're approving is the 3-year check, and then the approval of the board handbook is in the policy. Anything else policy wise? Okay. Superintendent report.
Yeah, just real quick, winter sports are upon us, so we're excited. We've got basketball going, wrestling going, wrestling home tomorrow night, so if anyone can attend. Just want to say too, a shout out to our Melanie Saminsky and our play. We lost a lot of seniors last year that were very involved in our theater program. And so we had lots of kids this year that were doing things for the first time, not only maybe lead roles, but also in the backup of the lights and the sound. And they just did an outstanding job. It was a play that was a takeoff of Harry Potter. And they just did a really, really good job. So love to see the young ones coming up and just stepping right into those footsteps. So that was really fun. And now we have concerts. So had our choir concert last week, band concert next week. So if you can come, please do. They do a wonderful job as well. Love it.
All right. Any questions for the superintendent? All right. Heidi, business manager report.
Good evening again, Chair Hofstad, members of the board, Dr. Christine Wertheim-Perman, presenting the fiscal year 2025 December budget update. Enrollment is at 988 students, was as of the month of November. As compared to previous year, 907, a slight increase. We budgeted 910 and we continue to track it monthly. Historical data for the last 10 years based on enrollment, and we see this every month, and that the fact that every year we have fluctuations in enrollment. This is a look at month end October for the general fund revenues, provided some additional detail going forward to provide additional insight on where we're at. The overall different categories, but if you look at the budget as compared to prior fiscal years, the overall percentage is on track at 26%. You drill down into the different types of revenues by source. Our local levy is just based on the timing of the month-end reports and the receipt of the property taxes that were paid in the month of October. So that's the timing issue there and the variance and the reason for the variance there. Federal revenues are based on receivables entered that need to be adjusted from the prior fiscal year. That has been done, but at the time, these adjustments were not included in the overall comparison. And then the miscellaneous local revenue variance there from the previous year is specifically due to insurance recovery for a bus that was rear-ended, that was repaired. General fund expenditures, again, month end October, looking at the various expenses by object code. Overall, we are above projected totals as a percentage of the budget as compared to prior years. We're currently tracking at 26% for the month end of October. And on the next slide, I go into the details as to what those variances are specifically. So salaries and wages were tracking under budget by 0.5%. We'll continue to monitor that, and we'll continue to see salaries and wages come in under budget based on staffing changes in the current fiscal year. Benefits are coming in over budget at this point in time. Granted, reminder, this is a snapshot of month end. And the variances there specifically are an overall increase in health insurance premiums that are specifically tied to the percentage in different contracts. Work comp increased and unemployment expense increased. All of which work comp, unemployment really have no control over what those expenses are going to be. Certainly work on work comp by maintaining safe working conditions, but that is ongoing. Purchase services are over budget, tracking 12% based on previous years, and this is based on timing and payment. So we've talked about this at all of our board meetings. Our property insurance in previous fiscal years, we paid it per the month. And then we paid a small fee for being able to pay that monthly. Our district has sufficient cash flow, and so we made the decision that we're going to pay that all up front, so we can lessen the total expense overall. So that's the difference there. And then LTFM, long-term facilities maintenance, repairs, and projects. As compared to previous years, projects spanned out across the fiscal years, whereas this specific fiscal year, we budgeted for and completed the recarpeting of certain classrooms in the district. So that's the overall reasonings for a result in 12% over budget. We'll see that spread out over the course of the months to come. Supplies were under budget, ranging from 1% to 6%, specifically buildings and grounds and transportation fuel. Capital, we're on track as budgeted. We budgeted to purchase a bus. We budgeted to purchase planned technology needs and curriculum. So those are all on budget. And then the other category is a small facet to the budget. And this specifically, the variance is based on reclassification of some of the fees and codes associated with MDE's coding requirement. Any questions on the budget overview before I jump into post-secondary? So this was, as member Trout had shared, we visited this last board meeting, just giving you a high-level overview of the colleges our students are attending. With post-secondary, the opportunities that RHS students are attending college in the schools here in our buildings, being taught by our educators, and then the overall total student count and the total credits for the 24-25 school year. And so almost 80 students are participating in either post-secondary and or college in the schools, which accounts for over 1,000 credits specifically to college courses. And then on the next slide, if you take into account the total credits and some historical data that we had shared last month, but based on the revised number of credits that students are taking, we're seeing in a very large increase in the impact to the overall school district's budget in the 24-25 fiscal year. So each credit equates to about $261 per credit for post-secondary. And we budgeted $170,000. We're seeing that that's going to need to be revised upwards to almost $300,000. So a very large impact to our budget. And same with college in the schools, it's $3,000 per course. We're seeing that on track as far as an overall account to the budget, with the exception of one class in accounting, I believe, that's not being provided, which would decrease our overall college in the schools budget by about $6,000 to $9,000 total. But we're seeing a very large impact on post-secondary. We continue to work through that. I know administration are working with post-secondary organizations in partnership with other school districts to really determine and define what this looks like going forward, opportunities for students and school districts to work better together to manage these growing costs. And then this also impacts how we look at revising our 24-25 school year budget. Already having mitigating factors in place, but now working even more diligent to lessen expense, increase revenue so that we can present a revised budget that in where revenues exceed expenditures. So we're focused on it, we're committed to it, we're working through it, and we'll continue to report out monthly. Any questions on post-secondary or college in the schools?
So PSEO for that piece, it's student option and they can take whatever classes they want as long as it manages with Monica and that stuff. And there's really nothing we can do.
We are
Good,
not,
right.
yes, we're not in a position to ever dissuade a student. As long as they meet the requirement of a college, they have every right to take that course. The other thing is when they withdraw from a course, if they drawn past the time, we still pay, the college keeps the money. We find them another class, so we pay almost double in some of those cases. So that's what she's talking about. We gotta work with these colleges to find out whether this is the way that it's managed right now works the best for everyone. Because that's one particular example of where that money goes to the college, the child is no longer in the class and they're keeping those dollars.
And yeah, to answer your question, we have very little, if any, control over those expenses.
We can't, yeah. And that's dictated in legislation.
Yep.
We know,
College in the school, so.
so that's our
If we-
teacher.
Yeah, if we continue to have a robust college in schools, it probably.
The child could still choose the
Choose.
PSEO class.
Yes, I
over
know that,
ours.
but if it's something that they choose, you know,
They still can choose. that,
I know,
yeah.
I know.
So one thing we've talked about is like, which one might be easier? Sometimes students might choose that option too, so it might not always be ours. It just can be dependent.
Right.
Anything else?
Do we know why the large increase in PSEO? Do we have like larger classes right now or?
Based on enrollment, no, we don't have, well, I guess I can't say
I
that.
can't answer that. I
can't,
think, I don't
Because
know.
I don't know
just think,
specifically the higher grades, I can't.
You want me to guess?
Yeah.
I'll guess. They're COVID kids. They learned how to do it on the computer at home, 9th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 6th grade. They're probably more comfortable with it than the ones before them were. You know? You want me to guess? I mean,
Yeah.
that's almost double for some reason.
I mean, it's good for the students, but. I do agree too, if we had more CIS, I think that could help keep more students in. I hear there's a lot of conflicts of trying to schedule CIS and certain progressions. It's not super easy from what I hear to get classes that you want.
you know, the other problem is the challenge that can be is the 18 credits they have to have beyond the masters in order to teach that class.
Yeah.
So to get the proper certification
Yeah,
is more
accreditation.
challenging to
Yep.
teachers in the K-12 system.
Speaking based on working in districts across the state of Minnesota, the majority are seeing this increase in students choosing post-secondary.
Yes, so
It's
that's
not just
that's across
Royalton.
our region, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eddie. Principal report.
Chair Hosted, members of the board, Superintendent Werekamp, Joel Swenson, high school principal. Two quick reports for you. November 15th, we hosted a Catalyst all-staff training for our in-service day. Catalyst, previously known as Envoy, is kind of a non-verbal classroom management technique, package of strategies that teachers can use in the classroom to effectively work with kids. It was a very good day, a very good training. I have been in classrooms and I have seen teachers making use of that. Envoy was really, 10 years ago, was almost solely an elementary type of program. And the benefits of it have now been realized that it applies across the board. And so with the rebranding of Catalyst, they have also updated the training to make it applicable to high schools. And so we're excited to do it. The teachers really, I'm thinking in 16 years of designing PD for teachers, this was one of the top 5 in my time as principal. It was really, really well received. The biggest part of that, like I said, is when you go out in classrooms afterwards that you're seeing the things in action, and we are seeing them in action. So we'll continue to encourage that and to support that. They will come and do some ongoing coaching with our teachers. They'll come in. The Catalyst leadership will come in and observe our teachers and provide feedback to them on some of the techniques that they're attempting to use in classes. So Catalyst was very good. And then on November 20th, we hosted our 6th grade parent day again. We had a bunch of parents in here and went through the school day. They went to all the classes. In fact, we had, I was like, what is going on? We had like 2 or 3 parents come in to see the nurse because they had been participating in Phy-Ed class. And Band-Aids, and it was a good time. They were having a good time. They navigate through the school day, lockers, lunch, classes, obviously participating in classes. Really fun to get that chance to have our parents in the building and see what it is. I always thought about, how does a parent, I sit at the dinner table with my 3 kids and they can talk about the school day, and I know what's happening. I know what's going on in the building. But to a parent who has not experienced that, when you talk about, well, I went to English class and then I had to go all the way to science class and then I had this due and this due, for them to get insight as to how the flow of the day goes, and they go from what's expected, where things get handed in the classroom, where they sit, how they group, all of those opportunities for parents to get a view of that is a really positive thing. Minus the Phy-Ed injuries, a very positive opportunity for our parents. And we will be looking to do it again next year. So we'll try to do it again in that November American Education Week timeframe, and invite this year's 5th grade parents to come in and join us for a day of school. Any questions?
Do you have both parents attend, or is it a requirement just one parent attend, or is there no requirement?
Just both parents can attend if they choose. We had some that split the day, like someone came for the first half and then the other parent came for the second half, and they switched off. And some parents were able to do it for the whole day. When they walked out, they're like, I'm tired. And then we had some parents that could come for a few hours. So, it was really open as to what was available to them.
Sure.
How many years have you been doing this?
This was year number 2. And so it grew a little bit this year, and we're hoping that the word gets out, like, hey, go do it. It's a fun opportunity for them to get to see what their kids experience.
I didn't get invited. My son was 6th grade last year. He did not think I should come.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Chair Hassett, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Burkham Herman, Tony Newman, elementary principal. A couple things for myself here, or for you guys. We had our letters training on the in-service day. It was just shy of 6 hours because we were able to package it in one day for us. We were able to get done in a little bit under 6 hours, but it was a good day, very interactive. Our staff were very focused. They were energized. They were engaged in what they were doing. Helped kind of set the tone for Unit 2, which is now getting into the classroom strategies that they're going to be using. So that was awesome. The next live is not until the end of February. So we've got a little bit of time for them to work on some stuff. And with this early out here on Wednesday, really digging into that Unit 2 stuff. American Education Week was the week before Thanksgiving, November 18th to the 22nd. We had Royalton PTO members managing the offices selling tickets for meals. And it went out really well. We had 346 meals that we sold, pre-K 5. And I would say just as many adults came to hang out. So we probably, over the course of the week, had about 700 to 800 adults eating with our children, which is awesome to see. Sit down and chat and laugh and smile, and they just get so excited to see their parents come in. Sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes it's not, but grandparents, aunts, uncles, it was a great to see. So it was cool. Last Thursday, we had two showings for our first and third grade concert. 1:30 p.m. showing, brought all the elementary kids over. All the ECC kids were in there. Good crowd of adults in there as well. And then our 6 p.m. show was a packed house. There was a lot of people here, a lot of people in the stands, the chairs on the floor, and these kids did an awesome job. So kudos to Miss Thompson to get them ready, and the teachers for helping to wrangle them as they were waiting to get on stage and perform. But they did a magnificent job. And then coming up here on Monday, Dr. Werkamp Herman mentioned it already. The band concert is on Monday. So it's the first opportunity for our fifth graders to show what they've learned. And that's at 6 o'clock for middle school and sixth grade, and 7 o'clock for fifth graders and high schoolers. So any questions?
It was awesome and excellent that Santa Claus was available for the
Yeah,
concert.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, did a good
It's
job.
amazing how he gets around.
Thank you. Athletic director.
Chair Hofstad, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Werkamp, Caitlin Arnzen. I'm here to present the fundraiser report for our student activities. We had a handful that participated in fundraisers from about May to November-ish time period. The Spanish Club, they had a wreath sale, which was in the last part of October to help for their Spanish trip. They sold 4,450 cents worth in wreaths. $3,224.01 has to be sent to the wreath company, so they made about $1,176. Prom had their burger stand at the homecoming game, and they ended up making $600, which I think is like the highest they've made, so that was good. Girls basketball did a free throw shoot-a-thon this summer. That's to help raise money to cover shooting shirts and anything else. There's no expenses, and so they profited $1,168.25. FFA fruit sales, they're still, I think, finalizing everything, but they had roughly $8,000 in income. Boys basketball, they just finished up their card fundraiser. And that's again to help offset equipment costs and uniforms and summer basketball stuff, and they made $4,100. Student council had two different things. They had their color run, which was a part of kind of homecoming, and kicked it off. They had about $885 in income, and expenses were about $400 for the powder and shirts and stuff. So they made about $485. They do their turkey bingo coin drive, which is a hoot to be in the hallways when they're gobbling down the hallways. And they raised money for the Morrison County Food Shelf. So they expenses were $65, income was $592. So they were able to give the food shelf $527. Cross country had two fundraisers this summer. They had a 5K, and they also did a 50-50 raffle during the parade. They went for food, end of the year banquet, and then new uniforms. The 50-50, they made $490. The 5K, they ended up, after expenses, made $2,397. And then volleyball did cookie dough and soup sales back in August for team building activities and uniforms, and they made roughly $4,500. Good turnout for stuff, and I know this year I was ordering lots of uniforms, so it's kind of nice to see the new stuff. So, any questions? Thank you.
All right, next we have the consent agenda. So we have the approval of regular board meeting minutes. And then the claims accounts and financials. Does anybody want to pull anything? All right,
Chairman, I move the consent agenda.
thank you, Director Hackett,
Second.
second by Director Rory. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, and we'll look at the approval of the final levy.
Just you.
So, the approval of the final levy being requested for consideration tonight is in the amount of, I can't remember what that amount was now. I have that slide.
$2,607,996.73.
Thank you. Which is also the same as the preliminary levy that was set back in September at the maximum.
Does anybody want to make that motion?
Motion to approve.
Director Bowman, thank you.
I'll second.
Second by Director Hackett, thank you. Discussion. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, are you gonna introduce the audit report as well?
Yes, yeah, that's next.
Yep.
Right. Good evening. Tonight we have from Brady Martz, our accounting firm, the presenter, Brian Opsahl, maybe have him correct me if that was wrong. He's virtual and will be presenting our fiscal year 24 final audited results.
Pulling back up here.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotta just get in.
Okay. Perfect. And you nailed the last name. It's Opsal, so well done. I guess the plan of attack tonight will be for me to go through the highlights of the audit report, give you a chance to ask some questions if anybody has any. I do have a tendency to run through things relatively quick, so feel free to slow me down and ask questions. I'll certainly open it up for questions at the end of the audit if there are any as well. Before I get into the audit report, wanted to just give a couple highlights. No difficulties performing the audit, no disagreements with management, no new accounting standards for FY24. So as far as the financials are concerned, everything was arrived at the same way it has in the prior years. There is one new accounting standard for FY25 related to compensated absences. Nothing really that you're going to have to pay additional, just a different accounting exercise, we'll call it. And we'll work with Heidi on how that comes about. The other soapbox item I got for this evening is I've had a couple, too many districts that have had some fraud occur related to EFT payments from the bank. So just to keep in mind that anytime you're paying somebody electronically and they switch or want to switch account numbers, routing numbers, etc., make sure that that's being followed up with a phone call. It's beginning to be more prevalent for some things to be paid electronically, whether it be construction contracts, credit cards, etc. And we've had a couple instances now where emails have come from legit vendors that have been basically hacked, and the forms being used by districts, etc., to change these are actually being used, and it looks real because they're using things like ChatGPT to arrive at some, regular knowledgeable emails that would come from somebody that you're working with, as opposed to what they used to be, where it was, Prince of Egypt or something says you get this great inheritance. No longer are you getting that where you're able to see that. So just word of caution, a phone call might be needed to verify those types of requests if that is happening. So that's my soapbox item. Into the audit report, I will try to share my screen. So I believe I've got the independent auditor's report up right now. I'll get this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So if anybody's following along, I'll try to throw out some page numbers so you can follow along. Pages 2 through 4 is the independent auditor's report. We've issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, so that's considered a good or a clean opinion that the financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It is management's responsibility for the numbers and the footnotes in the financial statements, and it's our responsibility as auditors then to ensure that they're reasonably stated, which is what our opinion is stating is that we believe that they are. The second section of the audit report starts on page 5 through page 12, and this is known as management's discussion and analysis section. This is a high-level overview of the district year in review, and it provides some financial insights of what happened. It's probably the easiest read of the financial statements. It has some comparative information. So if you're looking for just basically a snapshot of how the year went, this would be the section that I would look at to provide some comparative information, etc. The first audited financial statement starts on page 13 and runs through page 14. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of detail or time on this statement. I think it's a little bit confusing to understand because it includes things like your net pension liability, which is really an accounting exercise related to your involvement in the pension plans at the state level that are unfunded. It includes your long-term debt, fixed assets, etc. The bottom number that you see on page 14 is your overall net position within that full accrual financials, $3,038,434. That number that you see above that, that unrestricted number, it's deficit because of the net pension liability. Once again, just an accounting exercise. You still pay your budgeted amounts set forth by state statute. The second page is, or the next page is going to be the statement of activities, which is your changes in the full accrual financial statements. 3 lines from the bottom, the overall change is a positive $576,926. Once again, this includes things like depreciation expense and changes within that net pension liability, which can change quite a bit from year to year based off of actuarial type changes and assumption changes. So the next couple of pages I go through is probably it maybe hits home a little bit more where we get through your fund accounting financials. And this is what you'd budget off of. The first column of numbers that you see there is your general fund. 2 lines from the bottom, the overall fund balance within the general fund is $2,426,248. The line that you see above that, unassigned fund balance, those are the dollars that you have available to spend that are not restricted or earmarked for any purpose. $1,942,712. One of the things that we do to determine the health of the district is we take that number divided by your general fund expenditures, and you're at 16%, as I heard Heidi mention earlier. Anything between 15 and 25% is kind of where we'd expect districts to be and considered healthy. And you're also above your fund balance policy as well, which is from 14 to 20%. So basically right in the middle of that. Last year, as an example, you were at 15.1%. So it is a little bit higher than you were at last year. So I wanted to point that out. The debt service fund has $449,000 of fund balance, which is restricted for debt service. And then your community service and food service funds combined for a fund balance of $555,581. And we'll get to a little bit more detail on that here in a second. Page 18 then shows the changes within each one of these funds. 3 lines from the bottom is going to be your overall change in fund balance. The general fund was down $486,494. Debt service basically broke even. It was down about $3,130. And then the combination of your food service and community service funds were up $42,951. And we'll see how that compares to your budget here for the general fund here in a second. The next several pages, which is pages 20 through 42, these are the footnotes to the financial statements, and I usually don't go into much detail during this presentation, but we can certainly circle back if there's any questions. It would have things like your debt schedules, information on your net pension liability, capital assets, etc. But for right now, let's go to page 43. Page 43 is your budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund. And the column that you see all the way on the right is going to be the difference between your final budget and actual. And so you can see at the top, revenues were about $332,000 more than budget, a combination of federal sources as well as other local and county revenues. A lot of times, student activities comes into play here because not all districts budget for student activities, but they do get rolled into your general fund for financial statement purposes. But maybe a third of the way from the bottom of the page is your total expenditures, $830,000 more than budgeted. Went through this a little bit, discussion with client. A lot of it has to do with some sub costs as well as utility increases, PSEO costs, like I heard before. So those are some of the reasons that the expenditures were higher than budget. You were expected to basically break even in the general fund, and you were down about 486,494. So an overall variance of $487,127.
The other component of that expense was our services for special education that we paid to Midstate that came in exceptionally over the budgeted expenditures.
Yes, good point. I did fail to mention that. Page 49 or pages 49 and 50. This breaks down your food service and community service funds. As you can see on page 49, the food service fund does have a positive fund balance of $168,977, and the community service fund has a positive $386,604. If you look on the next page, you can see overall changes for both funds were positive. The food service was up a little bit over $30,000, and the community service fund was up over $12,000. Page 51 is another way to kind of look at the breakdown of the different buckets of money that you have for the year. And the top section is going to be your general fund. The columns, three columns to the right is the column that we kind of focus on, that gets sent into the UFARs and or into the state. Looking for things that are negative. You have all positive fund balances with the exception of school readiness, which has a negative fund balance of $21,000. You do have funds available in the community service restricted code to cover that, so there's no red flags as far as this is concerned. There are other buckets of money that you have up in the general fund within scholarships, student activities as well. So this is, like I said, just another page. There's no red flags as far as where you're at. Everything looks healthy as far as an auditor perspective. Then we get into pages 52, which is your legal compliance letter for the state of Minnesota. They provide us a guide to go through things like pledge collateral, conflicts of interest, bid work, etc. This is a clean report, so there's no issues or findings that we did during that testing. And then lastly, your government auditing standards letter. This is a high-level overview of your internal control structure at the district. We have one repeat finding, which virtually all districts your size are going to have, related to separation of duties within the business office. Same as prior year, basically the risk exists, but we do think that you have things in place such as board approval of bills, et cetera, that help mitigate those risks. So just wanted to point that out, that exists, even though it's mitigated. So anyway, that was a very quick run through of the audit report. I'd be happy to circle back to any page or answer any questions anybody might have.
Do we have any questions for Brian? All right. Doesn't sound like there's anything from here, Brian.
Okay. Well, thank you. Have a good evening.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. With that, I will take an approval of the audit report. Director Bauman, thank you. Second by Director Roaring, thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. And then approval of donations by resolution. Did somebody want to introduce the donations tonight? Director Trout, thank you. All right, she's introducing the following resolution. United Ways Tools for Schools Fund generously donated clothing and snacks totaling $293 to the Royalton Elementary School for students in need of a snack, clean clothes, a warm jacket, or a class looking for puzzles and games to add to their learning. The Rice Area Sportsmen generously donated $4,000 to be used towards supplies, materials, and transportation for the trap shooting team. The Rice Area Sportsmen generated $1,500 to be used towards the 5th grade deep portage trip in the 25-26 school year. The Royals Wrestling Club generously donated $250 to be used towards supplies, materials, and transportation for the robotics program. The Royalton Fire Department generously donated $10,000 to be used towards the Spanish class trip to Spain. And an anonymous donation of $178 was given to Royalton Public Schools to improve the multi-purpose space for classes and golf program use. So be resolved by the school board to accept these gifts. An adoption of the foregoing resolution was seconded by member Hofstad. And on a roll call vote. So clerk, can you call the roll?
Director Trout?
Aye.
Director Bauman?
Aye.
Director White?
Aye.
Director Ryan? Abstain. Director Hackett?
Aye.
Director Hofstad?
Aye. All right. 5 and 1 abstain is passes 6-0. All right. And next page. So policy reading. So the first one we have is to approve rescinding the 203.1 school board procedures policy. Do you want to make that motion? Director Bauman, thank you.
I'll second.
Second by Director Trout, thank you. Any discussion on that one? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. We have the second policy reading for public hearings, and that one's still going through the rings. And the next one we have is approval of our third policy reading. So this one's the crisis management policy, which was our 3-year review on this one. So can I get somebody to?
I'll move it.
All right, Director Hackett, thank you.
I'll second.
Second, Director Trout, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And approval of the Royalton School Board Handbook. Somebody want to make that motion?
I will.
Director Trout, thank you.
Second.
Second, Director Bowman, thank you. Any discussion on that? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, so,
Will this go out to the new board members
yes.
before January?
Yes, yep. The plan is to meet with John and Ellie, in the next 2 weeks, something like that. Give them the handbook and, kind of talk through that. And then after we do our organizational meeting, going through, kind of that second step of, hey, here's what to expect at the first meeting type of thing.
Sure.
Hopefully it's helpful.
Mhm.
On like page 4 in the handbook.
It is. Talks through all of that. Yep, that's for sure. All right, upcoming meeting schedule. We have January 6th for the organizational meeting, and then 13th for the actual regular board meeting. So before we adjourn, Tyra or Angela, do you have any words that you'd like to say?
I'll just say thank you. It's been amazing to be part of the board. I'm really happy that I was voted in and I had the opportunity to do it. Thank you to all of you guys for doing it for as long as you have. And I just, please keep the students as your number one priority. That's why you're here. It's for the students, and strong schools give you strong communities. So keep up the great work.
All right, thank you very much, Tara.
Actually, the same echoing here. It was really a great experience. I feel honored that I was voted in. It was very new to me, so I learned a lot through the process, and it was great to be part of the community, very immersed into the school. So great.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. As well, both of you for the last 4 years. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Director Bauman,
Second.
second by Director Rowe. I figured that's where it comes from. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries.